Testing, testing. All right. Good evening, Oberlin. My name is Jim. I'm really excited to be out here tonight and be able to get an opportunity to talk. So I hope that as I get ready to share about something that's pretty important to me, and I'm assuming important to everybody, that we would all just be encouraged by it and take an interest in it. So a while back, I used to think that Christians were sexist and dumb, gullible, intellectually lazy, and worst of all, I should say, willing to believe a comforting lie rather than embrace the truth. What I didn't understand is that all of these things can be true on an individual basis, yet still have zero bearing on Christianity and the truth claims that it makes. Just because there are bad examples of something or someone or some group or whatever being represented doesn't mean that what they're representing is necessarily false or wrong or whatever. There's bad examples of everything everywhere. We have, for example, great examples of politicians out there, most of them, in my opinion, in our local area that are trying to do good things for us. And then we have some pretty bad examples of politicians that are out there that, in my opinion, are mostly confined to the federal level. Likewise, you can have a good example of a professional basketball player who says he's a professional player, looks like a professional player, but if you put him on the court, he can't hit a three or do a layup. And likewise, you've got people like LeBron James and Michael Jordan who are excellent examples of a professional basketball player. But the point is that neither the good example or bad example of professional basketball players mean that basketball is somehow bad or stupid or whatever. And the same thing goes for Christians. For many years of my life, I grew up having lots of bad examples of Christians in my life, and that made me believe a lot of really weird things about Christianity. And so it was until I got to be a little bit older and started to really think about it in a more analytical way that I realized that those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. You can have bad examples of Christians without Christ being false or Christianity being wrong. And so that was something that, like I said, I struggled with for a good long while. Almost 10 years ago, I was an atheist. I took comfort in science reinforcing what I believed about God. But as I started to honestly evaluate what confirmed science actually said, what I discovered ended up changing my life. For example, most people are pretty familiar with the Big Bang Theory. So for those of you who don't know, Big Bang Theory essentially states that before the universe came into the current existence that it is, or at least the format, that the universe existed first in you could call it a primordial atom of sorts, where all of the energy and matter and everything that would eventually become the universe we live in was contained in this really, really, really tiny, really, really, really dense molecule, and then it exploded or banged, to use the term by the theory. It banged and then expanded out into everything that we can see and observe today. But there's some questions that are left to be begging about this, and I'm not saying that the Big Bang Theory is false. Quite the opposite. I tend to believe that the Big Bang Theory is a reasonable account for how the universe came into existence. But whether you believe the Big Bang Theory or not doesn't really matter, but we do have some issues with it, and not so much with the theory itself, but with the assumptions that go along with it. For example, one of the assumptions that you have to make is to believe the Big Bang Theory is that something can come out of nothing, which we've never observed ever in science, which is problematic for someone who would be considering themselves a naturalist, or someone who only believes in what they can see, feel, touch, and observe in the natural world. And so we have an issue of where did this first quote-unquote primordial atom come from in the first place? That's a problem for the naturalist, for the person who does not believe in God. Because if you have something coming out of nothing, that clearly violates scientific law. There's never, ever, once in the history of mankind, have we ever observed something appear out of absolutely nothing. It is scientifically impossible. If this were to happen, it would be nothing short of a miracle. And last I checked, science and naturalists do not believe in supernatural miracles. So we've got a problem there. Another point, another issue. Why did the original molecule that expanded or bang, why did it bang in the first place? Why did it expand? That might seem like a silly question, but if I can quote Isaac Newton's law of motion, it states that an object at rest remains at rest, and an object in motion remains in motion at constant speed and in a straight line unless acted on by an unbalanced or outside force. Whenever one object exerts a force on another object, the second object exerts an equal and opposite force on the first. So according to the law of motion, which all scientists accept, according to the law of motion, it is not even possible for the universe to have expanded in the first place without some external force, or God, to act on it. Someone might say, but why do we need God in this equation? In time, we may discover some scientific cause or reason to explain the creation of the universe without invoking God. To that, I have two problems. Number one is that you still have not answered the first question, which is how we got that atom, that primordial atom in the first place. And you still need to answer that question. We suspended belief a bit just to say, okay, well, let's ignore how it got here by just saying, okay, it's there. Now, why did it expand? But you still need to go back and answer that question. Number two, you're proposing that science weigh in where it cannot. Science has no political, religious opinion, no emotional opinion. Science is just a means by which we observe and study and know nature. So what you're saying is, well, can't science explain this? We're not dealing with a scientific problem that science can answer. You're dealing with a logical problem. Logically, scientifically, reasonably, you cannot explain the existence of everything without a godlike supreme being present in the equation. So that's one of the first things that I thought was interesting that I learned from a scientific perspective on why that there's an issue with just believing science is this almighty thing that we cannot argue against, and if you believe in science then you don't believe in God, or vice versa. If you believe in God then you can't believe in science. It's not true. But the assumptions that come along with some of these scientific theories and things that we've always learned and been taught about, the assumptions that go along with them are not part of those theories, but seem to get wrapped up in what people teach about them in the first place. So that's an issue. The next thing that I found was interesting was the necessary conditions for life to exist on Earth. I don't think that there's a whole lot of people that spend a whole lot of time just thinking about, what are all the different conditions in which that we need for Earth to be life permitting, or for our universe to be life permitting. But there's a lot of questions related to that, and if we don't have the right answer on a whole bunch of different questions, we don't have a life-permitting planet or universe, solar system, what have you. Some of these things are, for example, the distance of the Earth from the sun. If the Earth was too far away from the sun, it'd be too cold to support life as we know it, no life. If it was too close to the sun, it'd be too hot, and we could not permit life on Earth. The type of sun that the Earth is orbiting. There's a lot of different types of stars out there, ours being a yellow dwarf star. All these different stars give off different types of radiation. They obviously are very different sizes in many cases. They have different gravitational pulls. You need, the right type of star of the right size and actually at the right age of its life cycle to be life permitting. So we happen to have a sun that is of the right size, the right type, and the right distance from us, and the right age to be life permitting. The size of the Earth is another thing. If the Earth was too big, gravity would be too heavy, and again, life as we know it could not exist. Likewise, if it's too small, gravity is not strong enough to allow life as we know it to exist, so we have the same problem in the opposite direction. The placement of our solar system within our galaxy is also a factor. Our galaxy is very, very big. And just like a city, like say in New York, you have different levels of busyness the closer or further out that you get from its center. Our galaxy is extremely, extremely busy near its center. There are a whole lot of things happening at the near the center of our galaxy, most notably at the very center, a giant black hole that sucks in everything that it can and has an incredible gravitational pull. But there are suns going supernova at an alarming rate near the center of our galaxy, and those are creating gigantic explosions that have their own effect on top of changing gravity in the region. And to have a star like ours with a planet that should be life permitting close to that could be detrimental to our continuing to survive. Likewise, if you get too far out from the center, then we do not have the ability to have the random points of input from different asteroids and comets that did impact our solar system and our planet in the past, that gave it a lot of the characteristics that it has today. So you can't be too far out, it's not busy enough. Can't be too close, it's too busy, it's too dangerous. You need to be at the right point in a galaxy so that way it's not too busy, but just busy enough to permit life. The time period within our galaxy, like I mentioned, the age of the sun, even the age of the Earth, the planet that we're on. These things are a factor in them being life permitting. Another aspect of that can be, for example, it's thought that our galaxy has recently completed merging with another galaxy. And right now we can observe, we can get our telescopes out and look out into space with the really, really powerful ones and see that there is, and I don't know the names of them, so you have to look this up, but there's two galaxies that are currently intersecting right now. There is complete chaos in those galaxies from a galactic standpoint. Everything's getting jumbled up. Things are running into each other. It is, and they're going to, just like if you were to throw a rock into a pond, it's disturbing everything in that area. And so I guarantee you that if there was somehow life in either one of those galaxies in the near future, when they are done collecting and combining into one, they would not be life permitting. So we cannot be in a galaxy, likewise, that is too active or combining with another one, or else it would not be life permitting. The shape of the galaxy is another aspect. There are different shapes. We are what's in, I forget the exact name, but it is a spiral. So if you attached a bunch of little strings to the end of a pencil and you just put them in straight lines going all the way out in different directions, and then you started twisting that pencil, if you imagine it standing up on a desk, and you start seeing all the different strings just kind of spiraling in a circle, that is the shape of our galaxy. There are several other types of shapes, and most of them are not life permitting. The time period within our own solar system as well. Our solar system did not look the way it does today forever. It did not always look that way. And it did not have the same makeup. It did not have all the same features. You need a solar system that is likewise in some period of rest after having certain activity to be life permitting. We just happen to be in one of those solar systems inside of one of those galaxies that just happen to be life permitting. In order for Earth to permit life, you need to have a moon of appropriate size in orbit. Why is a moon necessary for life on Earth? The moon is known to pull on our tectonic plates and to cause the tides to roll in and out, and it is thought that that is a necessary aspect to our planet being able to support life and things to continue to be stirred up and move. You can't have a stagnant planet, or else it will likewise not be life permitting. The tilt of the Earth is a factor. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 2008 or 2003, there was a massive earthquake that caused a tidal wave that hit, I believe, India. And that tidal wave was so strong, and it hit India, southern India, at such a force that it sped up the world's rotation by a very, 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 very small amount and changed the tilt of our Earth by another very, very small amount. And that tilt had immediate effects on our environment. It's not great. They weren't great. It was obviously a very, very tiny effect. But just imagining a wave hitting a continent on our planet so strong that it could move the planet is kind of amazing to me. But that tilt had changes in our environment. And if you were to tilt it more radically, like a full degree, or if you were to turn it on its side completely, that would change the ability of our planet to sustain life. You need the presence of a giant gas shield or gas planet in the solar system. There are so many things, so many asteroids and different pieces of debris, space debris that comes flying around the solar system, around our galaxy, that if you do not have giant gas planets like Saturn and Jupiter to be able to attract it because they have such immense gravitational force and they're relatively close to us, if you do not have those, you are likely going to see a whole lot more activity impact the planet that you're living on. So again, you need those. You need an asteroid belt as well, like we have to catch the smaller stuff that's even closer to our planet than some of these gas giants that has the same effect. It stops a lot of these dangerous asteroids from hitting us. You need the proper atmospheric pressure and temperature to allow for liquid water. You can have water or ice or vapor on the planet, but if it is not liquid water, it is pretty well understood that that planet cannot sustain life. You need liquid water. You need natural elements in appropriate quantities to allow for the development of advanced technology. Now, in this case, we're not talking about a life-permitting factor here, but the whole reason I can talk to you right now, as all of you guys are very far away from me, is by using the equipment that I have with the electronics and stuff. The whole reason that you are able to call your cousin or your brother or sister or whatever on your phone is because we have special metals and in certain quantities on this planet that allow us to create these things. Gold is a good example. Gold is not just something that people wear on their finger when they want to get married or when they just want to deck out their hands or their necks or their ears or whatnot with jewelry. Gold is used in almost every single computer or electronic device. Gold is an amazing conductor of electricity, and there is a good amount of gold inside your smartphone. Please don't crack it open. It will not work if you take the gold out, but you need gold for a smartphone to work. You need a lot of these different elements to be able to build structures that can sustain large amounts of weight so that we can build skyscrapers and large facilities or go down deep into the depths of our ocean or to go out of our solar system, or rather our planet, and be able to explore space. If you do not have some of these elements, we are doomed to a caveman-like existence forever. There's a lot more factors that go into a planet or galaxy or universe being life permitting, but these are the ones I find most interesting and most easy to communicate. There's a lot of very, very complex, a lot more very complex different factors that go into this that you, in my mind, need to be very steeped in science to be able to understand. So I would encourage you to go and look into this if any of these things sounded interesting to you in any way. But suffice it to say that, sorry, I missed a point here. Additionally, if you were to change any one of the universal constants, such as the speed of light, gravity, or any of the others, we would not have a life-permitting universe. So there's another one. Sorry, I missed over that one. But suffice it to say that there's a lot more things that you can look to get a life-permitting planet or universe. And to say that you need every single one of these in a specific range or in just such a way to be able to have a planet that is just capable of sustaining life, not to mention how that life got here in the first place, which is another question entirely that we're not getting into right now. Just about a planet that can sustain life, you have a huge checklist of things that need to happen. And it's not a stretch to say that the odds of a life-permitting universe, galaxy, and planet are akin to pointing a gun at a target placed on the moon while you're blindfolded and in the dark and expected to hit a bullseye. Sounds like the naturalist or the person who does not believe in God needs another miracle. In order for life to be permitted on this planet, you need an incredible amount of things to line up in just such a way to allow us to exist. And that's, again, not asking the question, or answering the question, rather, how did we get here in the first place? How did life begin? I'm going to make a few more statements before finishing up. First, a word of caution, because as I'm up here saying this, somebody hearing this might think, okay, well, there's a lot of scientists that disagree with you, and that's great. And I would point out that just because a scientist makes a statement doesn't mean that the statement is scientific, or that is derived or constructed and adherence to scientific law. A scientist can say Christianity is false, but that statement has zero scientific weight or value. And you can imagine our imaginary scientist, Joe Schmo, making the statement that Christianity is false, and later we find out that scientist Joe Schmo was bullied as a person, or by a person who said they were a Christian, so he's lived his whole life hating Christians, leading up to him as an adult making the statement, Christianity is false. That does not give scientific weight to his statement or his opinion, but because he is a scientist, we tend to say, oh, a scientist said this, so it must be true scientifically. You need to really think about the statement that's being made and consider whether it is scientific or not. Some other points that are interesting to me. There is no science or research that explains emotion. There's some studies now where we can see our brain lighting up, or certain connections and neurons in our brain and whatnot, and we can attach those to our emotional activity, but that does not mean that we understand emotion, why we have it, or explain if other creatures have emotion or to what level they have emotion. We don't know that. There is no science or research that explains consciousness, likewise, to explain why you and I can sit here and say, why am I here? Or say that something is right or wrong, or be able to be aware of our surroundings and have desires and hopes and dreams. There is no science or research that can explain that. It just is. To this day, we do not understand why conception and the growth of a human happens. We can describe the process and what is happening from point to point. We can make observations, but we cannot give you a definitive reason as to why this is happening. We cannot say when person A and B come together and do the deed, what or say, we can say that, and then a child is conceived. We cannot look at their genetics to then turn around and say, well, they should have a human develop with these traits, and it's going to be so tall because mom and dad are so tall. It's going to be this skin color because mom and dad are this skin color. It's going to have an IQ of such and such because we have no way of predicting that. It is a completely unknown and random process as far as we are concerned, which is kind of interesting given our technological advancements and growth. But something so simple like conception and growth of a human still is inexplicable to us. The universe is understandable, observable, and the laws of nature, science, and physics can be tested and verified. This may seem like an odd statement to make, but it's something that is not at all guaranteed by a universe born of chaos and randomness, but is absolutely expected of a universe created and designed for the purpose of being known and studied and understood by humankind. There is no guarantee that a randomly generated universe or earth or group of life forms should be able to understand the world or universe around it. But we do. And that's amazing. Everything that exists in space and time must have a cause, must have a creator of sorts. The universe exists in space and time and has matter, therefore it must have a cause. I submit to you that cause is God, specifically the God of the Bible. And as I say this, I can imagine somebody asking, okay, well then if God created the universe, then who created God? And on the surface, it might seem like a really, really good question. However, you need to understand that the God of the Bible is an uncreated being. He was not created, he has always existed. He does not exist in space and time. He exists outside of what we can see and observe and experience as the natural existence of life. He does not exist within time. He is timeless. He is also spirit. We are not spirit. We are people. We are human beings. We have matter. We grow, we live, we die. So we're talking about a being that is completely different. He is not in time. He is not bound by matter or space. Therefore, he does not have a creator. And that is something that Christians believe about their God. A few more points that I'll make a philosophical statement here for those who enjoy provoking your minds. In a point that I will touch on more next week, because I'll be here again next week about the same time. If we are a product of random chance plus time plus matter, a random collection of molecules, then objective morality does not exist. I want to repeat that. If we are a random collection of molecules plus time and space, then objective morality doesn't exist. And when I say that, I mean morality that has a finite point that you can point to and say something is right or wrong definitively. That doesn't exist without God. Again, if you're talking about everything that just came into existence randomly, then we're just a bunch of collections of molecules, just like the tree, just like the microphone I'm holding, the books that I've got in front of me, the grass that we're walking on, the gazebo that I'm standing under. It's just all bunches of different random collections of molecules. And there is no moral value that one has over the other. We are all of equal value, which can sound mathematically appealing to some, I imagine, but a lot, when it comes down to application, I'm sure we would all completely disagree with that. I'm sure that whether you agree with me or not, you would much rather see a blade of grass be pulled up out of the ground and destroyed than me to die, or at least I would hope so. We inherently know and believe that humans, or something living at least, has value, and we do not assign the same value to everything that's around us. If objective morality is not real, so again, if we're looking at things from a naturalistic standpoint, and we are just a bunch of random collections of molecules, then rape is not morally wrong. It's just unfortunate for the victim. If objective morality does not exist, then murder is not morally wrong. It's just generally unproductive. If objective morality does not exist, then stealing or lying are not morally wrong so long as you can justify it somehow. It's just one collection of molecules imposing itself on another. Nothing moral has happened. And as I say that, I trust that everybody that can hear that naturally cringes and does not like that statement, because we know inherently that if somebody were to be raped, that something definitively wrong has happened. There is nobody with a conscience that would say that rape is okay, or it's okay in some cases, or anything like that. Likewise with murder. Cold-blooded murder is wrong. There is nobody that I know that believes that cold-blooded murder is right for any reason. We know this inherently. It logically follows that morals exist. And you don't get that on a naturalistic framework. You do not have objective morals when if we are all just a bunch of collections of molecules. And I will touch on that in much more detail next week. A history fact for you. The existence of Jesus is one of the most agreed upon facts of ancient history. Historians agree almost unanimously that a man named Jesus existed 2,000 years ago in the geographical area of Israel, was put to death by the Roman government via crucifixion, and soon after had a massive following claiming he had risen from the dead. And this group of followers would, despite massive persecution for centuries, eventually gain enough influence to become the world's dominant religion and remain that way ever since. And the last thing I'll say, and what I think is probably the most powerful thing that I can say, is that Jesus so accurately described the human condition, when you read the Bible and you see the things that he said and the way that he described us and what we face as individuals, the problems that we have, he so accurately describes the human condition and in himself provides the answer. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He offers you today, right now, the standing invitation to walk with him, to be forgiven, accepted, and loved. It is my sincere hope that you will choose to accept his invitation as I did almost 10 years ago. But you have to accept it. The invitation is there. Just because you have an invitation to a wedding does not mean that you are a guest at the wedding. You have to go. You have to take that invitation and use the information that was on that invitation to attend the wedding. Jesus did die for your sins, and he offers you eternal life living with him. But that offer means nothing if you do nothing. I will be here for the next 20 or 30 minutes if anyone would like to talk about anything I've said, or if you'd like to pray, I can pray for you. If you want to argue with me, suppose we can do that too, whatever you would like. Up here, I do have a few books that I brought that I think are good reads. Some of them I've read personally, others I haven't, but I bought them with the intention of reading because I know their subject matter. The first one up here is Cold Case Christianity. It's a story about, there's not a story, it's a book written by a former atheist who is a homicide detective, cold case detective, who was researching the Gospels as a homicide detective would to try to see if the claims were true. And through a lot of investigation and a lot of very interesting detective work, he ended up giving his life to Jesus. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing from a historical standpoint. If you like history, I would recommend that book. I've got these up here. If you'd like to take a look at them, you cannot borrow them. They are mine, but I will bring them with me so you can see them. Another book up here, a bit of a controversial one, it's called Darwin's Doubt. It is written by a man named Stephen Meyer. He is a scientist and a Christian who takes great exception to many of the assumptions and claims of evolution. And by saying this, I am not up here saying that evolution is inherently false. I don't know what your opinion might be on that. But the basic point here is that, much as like I was saying, with the existence and permission of life in this universe and on this planet, you cannot get there without God. So I think that this book does a great job of highlighting a lot of the questions surrounding the theory and isolating them from the assumptions that we make and conclusions we draw from them. There's another book up here called Improbable Planet. It's written by a physicist who's also a Christian. He was the source of much of the scientific information that I shared about our galaxy and solar system and how they are life permitting. Another book up here called Evidence That Demands a Verdict is another person, Josh McDowell and Sean McDowell. They are doctors of philosophy. They're very, very smart people, very well educated, and they have a very large book full of a lot of different reasons why you should believe in God, be they scientific, philosophical, historical, whatnot. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. There's another book up here called Reasonable Faith from a philosopher and scientist that I've grown to appreciate. His name's William Lane Craig. He goes through a large amount of wide-ranging arguments as to why Christianity is true, and I would encourage that. For those who are fans of old literature, what's the movie series we were just talking about earlier?
Lion, the Witch.
Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. What was the big Lord of the Rings style movies that they? What's the name of them?
Well, by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, no, the ones that C.S. Lewis wrote.
The Lord of the Rings style?
Yeah, it was. Do you know which one, Jeff? Do you know what I'm talking about? What's that? Yeah, Narnia. Narnia. If you've seen the Narnia movies, this guy's the author of the books that those movies were inspired upon. His name's C.S. Lewis. He wrote a book called Mere Christianity. He was also, at one point, an atheist who argued very strongly against the Christian faith before starting to take a serious look at much of his claims, and ended up converting to be a Christian and then being a great defender of the Christian faith. So all these books are up here. I'll leave them up here with me for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. I'll just be hanging out here. Feel free to come up to me and talk to me, argue with me, debate me, whatever. Ask questions. If you'd like me to pray for you because you feel like there's something that I've said that was of some value to you, then I would welcome a conversation. I hope that everybody here has a great evening, that you get home safe, and that you are blessed. Thank you.